Welcome to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX. Here are your hosts, the Radio Vagabond, Palle and TBEX CEO, Rick Calvert.
Welcome back to Travel Matters. We are home again. Well, kind of home again. I'm in Portugal, and Rick, you're back home in Temecula, California.
Home for now, for the immediate future, but soon on our way to Utah.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that, because I don't believe we've talked about this on the show. You've been living in California forever.
My whole life, yeah. Born and raised in San Diego. I first moved up to this area in 2002, a place called Canyon Lake, when I took a job in Los Angeles, and I didn't want to live in Los Angeles. You know, as a San Diegon, as everyone knows from Anchorman, founded by the Germans, we are raised hating Los Angeles and everything about it. So, anything north of Camp Pendleton is Los Angeles to a San Diegon. So I took a job in the middle of Los Angeles, the city of commerce. Sounds like a beautiful place, right? Uh-huh. And there was no way I was going to live in L.A. So I moved to a place north of San Diego. It's in Riverside County called Canyon Lake, which is an interesting community. It used to be a vacation community of people who wakeboard and water ski and would go to the Colorado River. That's a thing for people in Southern California who water ski or wakeboard. They go to the Colorado River and Lake Havasu on the weekends or any vacation. That's where they would go. Well, Canyon Lake evolved as private lake community of people who didn't want to drive out to Arizona anymore, and they could just go on the lake right there. And as more and more people were moving into this area, it became a community where people lived. So I lived there for a while. Mm-hmm. Back to San Diego for a bit, and then to Temecula. When my mom was getting older, we needed a place with a little guest house because mom in the house is difficult with wives. So we found a great place in Temecula with a guest house for my mom, and she stayed with us until she passed away a couple of years ago. And so we've been here now for a few years in Temecula, and we're just ready for a change.
And now Utah. Why? Because that's not the first choice for many people.
It was total accident. I wanted to move to Montana. I always had that in my head that if I ever left San Diego, I would move to Montana or Alaska. Alaska's a little less practical for somebody who travels for work like I do.
It's far away.
Yeah, it's just a little bit harder to get to places. Montana, still harder than San Diego, but a lot easier than Alaska. So I wanted to move to Montana. My wife, Angie, wanted to move to Texas. And I like Texas, but I just don't want to live in Texas. So Idaho was going to be our compromise. And we actually left on a trip when the kids were on their spring break to Idaho to look around. And Boise is the place where all the Californians are moving now. Now that we've ruined Oregon and ruined Washington, Californians are moving to Boise, Idaho.
What do you mean ruined Washington and?
Well, if you go to Washington or Oregon or Idaho now, you'll see stickers on cars that tell you go home, go back to California. We don't want you here because these are not very populated places, or were not until Californians moved there. Mm-hmm. Bend, Oregon is a great example. It is a beautiful town, a little college town. Used to be a sleepy little college town. And then literally tens of thousands of Californians moved there. And now they've got traffic like California. So they hate people from California. So anyway, because the real estate prices in these places is really low relative to California, literally half the price of a house in California you used to be able to get in Oregon or Washington, and then Idaho. Not anymore. Mm-hmm. Because so many Californians have moved there, the prices have gone up. So another reason for them to not like us is the traffic. And by the way, their cost of living has gone up because these people have gone there, and it's just more crowded. And, you know, we're very spoiled in America when what we call crowded is not crowded by other world standards. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're looking at moving to Idaho. We drive up there for a 8-9 day trip. And the first day we stopped in this little town called Ogden, Utah, which just happened to be where we ended up at the end of that first day's drive. And, we stayed the night, and I had talked to Ogden, Utah about potentially hosting a TBEX. So I told my wife, when we were leaving the next day, hey, can we just drive by the convention center real quick? I want to see what it looks like. And, we drive by, and it's really nice. I got out of the car. I didn't talk to them, to the tourist board. I didn't set an appointment or anything. I just went and looked through the window, right? And right next door, they have this Egyptian theater, and it looks super cool. You know, it's an old movie theater with this Egyptian theme, and it's connected to the convention center. And I'm like, wow, this looks cool. This got potential for TBEX in the future. And then we drove to the downtown, because it's like 1 block away, the old town of Ogden, Utah. And that also is super cool. And so I'm like, okay, so attendees can stay at this hotel right next door. There's 3 hotels that are immediate walking distance to the convention center, like a block away. That's the thing we like. The downtown is another block away, and then it's like a 4-block strip, 25th Street in Ogden, Utah, with lots of stuff, restaurants and bars and little shops and things people can do. And it ends at the railway station, and they've got a car museum, and super cool. So I'm like, wow, this place could be a good TBEX host. And my wife notices these houses that are in the same area, and they're called craftsman houses. So Americans know what those are. They're built in the 40s. And it's a unique architectural style.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, let's go look at a couple houses. So we drove up the street, and it just turns out that there are like miles of these craftsman houses that go from Washington Street up towards the mountain, and the mountain is right on the edge of town. So as you go further and further up the hill, you get closer and closer to the mountain, and it's just, again, mile and mile and mile of these craftsman houses. And then at the end, the base of the mountain, there's all these hiking trails. That's my thing. You can hike, right? You could literally walk out your backyard and go hiking. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And my wife just loves like every other house she sees. So she's like, I could live here. And I'm like, okay, well.
What were you thinking when she said that?
I hadn't thought of Utah as a place. It is my kind of destination because of the mountains and the natural stuff. I could do lots of camping and hiking and stuff there. So yeah. I'm in.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't she'd never mentioned it. I never thought of it. So we continue on our way up to Idaho, and we went to Boise first, which is a very nice town. We met a lot of people there. It seemed like every other person we talked to was from California, from San Diego or Los Angeles. There were so many Californians we talked to.
I actually have a friend who lives in Boise, and I believe that he's from Los Angeles.
Of course he is. Like every restaurant we ate at, our waiter was from California. But we just didn't like it. It was too spread out. And we didn't really see downtown Boise because we weren't looking for a place to live. I mean, we were looking for a place to live, not to, visit. So we were only there for just driving through for a few minutes. We stopped at this really amazing park, and there was some music festival going on in downtown Boise. So it looked like a really happening town for visitors in particular. But we just didn't like the way it was laid out. Everything seemed too far away, and it was just took too long to get around. We didn't like the style of the houses. A lot of new construction, because they were basically just converting farm fields into housing tracts. So we went over to Idaho Falls, which was our second place, and that's real close to Yellowstone. So again, I'm in. It's much smaller. We stayed in a craftsman house, Airbnb there. We liked it, but everybody told us it's really cold here, especially in the wintertime. So we're like, okay. Mm-hmm. And my wife just kept talking about Ogden, Utah the whole freaking time. So I emailed the people I knew at the tourist board. I'm like, hey, we just happened to stop in Ogden on the way. The convention center looks super cool. My wife says she wants to move there, and they invited us to stop again on our way home and see some more stuff and do an official tour of the convention center, which we did. It was great. We went to a town called Huntsville, which is like just idyllic. Okay. And another thing, to get to the mountains, Huntsville from Ogden is about 15 minutes. And Angie is terrified of mountain roads. She gets really anxious going on windy switchback mountain roads. There's like no switchbacks. It was like the easiest mountain ascent I've ever had in the car. So it was super. She didn't get scared once going up there. And you get in this little town called Huntsville. There's two towns up there in this valley. They call Ogden Valley, Huntsville and Eden. The place is called Eden.
Oh, that says a lot.
It was storybook, unbelievable beauty. There's ski resorts all around you. I guess they turned the park into a great big ice skating rink in the wintertime. It's a gigantic park. They have musical events like every weekend. In the summertime, they're every day. It was beautiful. So that's a place you could go on a day trip from Ogden. Mm-hmm. And again, if you snowboard or ski, which I love snowboarding and skiing, you're 15 minutes away from the mountain. So we went back to Ogden. We did the convention center tour at the beautiful convention center. I'm not saying TBEX is going to be there.
That would be breaking news.
Yeah, I'm not saying that TBEX is going to be there, but this is a great town where TBEX could go.
Yeah.
Great town. People would love it. It's 45 minutes to an hour from Salt Lake City, which is a big city, beautiful city, lots of history, killer music scene.
Yeah.
And it's close to the Salt Lake City airport, even closer to the airport. So anyway, that's how it happened. That's a really long version.
Yeah. And I just want to say, if TBEX ever goes to Ogden, the closing party is in Rick's backyard.
Maybe so. Depends. If we have a big enough backyard, absolutely.
But have you actually found the actual place that you're going to have you found a house?
No. So we've been on Zillow and Trulia and all these other sites, and we've called a bunch of people. And so we're going to we're packing now. We're either going to get an Airbnb. The goal is to leave by the end of the month. It's middle of June.
Wow. That's fast.
To be all packed up and ready to go. We'll either get an Airbnb when we get there and then get the final destination.
That sounds good.
Or we may take a quick trip, Angie and I, up there and pick a house and then move. So.
Should we get into today's interviews?
Why not? That's enough about me.
Yeah. The first one that we're going to share with you is the conversation we had with Fuse, TBEX first ever and maybe last volunteer. And she is doing photography and helping the video guy out and a bunch of other things. So let's get to know Fuse because she's an interesting character. We have another guest now, and it's Fuse, and it's not your real name.
No, that's my nickname. So my name is Fusa. But people always have a hard time pronouncing it, the way it's spelled. And so high school friends used to call me Fuse, and that's just so much easier. Even at Starbucks, I just write Fuse.
Oh, my God.
Starbucks, sometimes I say
tell
it's
you,
Maria.
I have so many different ways of spelling my name at
I'm
Starbucks.
sure, because you have a unique name,
I collect photos of Starbucks cups.
Yes.
And,
What's the weirdest name anybody's called you?
There was a time in Budapest that I ordered a burger, and I said, my name is Palle, P-A-L-L-E, and they came out shouting, Philip. So I actually sometimes at Starbucks.
And you didn't think it was yours?
Definitely. I waited and waited.
Oh,
and then after 20 minutes, I said, where's my burger? What did you order? I ordered this chili burger. Oh, I called your name many times.
Oh, God.
And the next day, I just said, my name is Bo, B-O. And then he wrote P-I-O.
Bio.
So, P-O.
I noticed somebody here calling you Bo.
Yeah, and maybe I should start using that because whenever I say my name is Palle, people lean forward and say, what? Yeah.
I know I say Palle.
Palle, yeah.
Palle.
Yeah.
But It's pretty close, right?
My parents, they were not lucky.
Where were
when
you
they
born?
Denmark.
Okay.
But where does your name come
My
from?
son's going to Denmark this month to a very small town, Viborg?
Oh, that's very close to where I used to live.
Okay.
And
so
in fact, both my parents were born in Viborg.
Oh, nice. So he does animation, and they have a school there.
Yeah, my brother went there.
So he's going for a week, and I'm hoping he falls in love with it. So I'm hoping that's going to be his college. Sorry, sidetrack.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So-
have him send me a message, and I'll give him some good tips on what to see.
My sister's going with him.
Absolutely.
So
but I asked you, Fuse, where did that come
so
from?
it's my grandma. I'm originally from Brazil. It's my grandmother's name, but it's not a common name in Brazil. So I've never met another Fusa besides my grandmother. So at first I thought maybe it was a typo when she was born. You know, she's born like 1930. Maybe it's a typo. But it does have like an Arab, the F and Z combination. In Turkey they have Feza with the Y. And I've seen it in Senegal too. I've seen people in Senegal with that name, but like, you know, there's no meaning. So even it's a unique name even to Brazilians.
But you live in the U.S.
Yes. So I grew up in the U.S. and I live in southern Florida now.
And the reason you're here is because you're the first volunteer.
The first volunteer we've ever had at TBEX, and it was just the perfect timing when she sent us an email. We've never had a volunteer. We've had lots of people ask before, just because I've done events with volunteers. Comic-Con has hundreds of volunteers. But
It's
the
hard
truth
to
is,
manage, yeah.
volunteers are flaky.
But Fuse is not.
Fuse is not.
Fuse is on fire.
And that's why I wanted her to come on the podcast so we could recognize
Oh, thank you so much.
what a great job
what an
you
honor. Thank you.
did just by sending us. So she's helping with photography and video.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've started recording video of the sessions for the first time in Billings. And Rex, who people have seen running around here as our video guy.
The redhead.
With the muscles.
And he didn't shoot the video in Billings. He edited the video in Billings. But he was going to edit the video in Italy, in Sicily. But
That didn't happen.
COVID happened. So his first time was Tri-Cities, Washington. And, you know, it's a lot of work doing all this video. And he had said to me, you know, it would help if I had an assistant.
Yeah.
And Fuse had sent an email like right around that exact same time saying,
so do you have a volunteer program? I know this is last minute, a little crazy, but I would love to go to Spain. And, you know, and I said I could help with photography. Whatever you need, I'm there. I'll serve.
Yeah.
And then he said, hey, well, are you willing to help, you know, Rex with video? I was like, that's up my alley. I've done video before, whatever you need. I know a little bit of gear. And just hear whatever, you know, you need water, I'll bring you water. You need the USB?
We'll see the results after the conference. You know, we'll see your pictures, but you've got a professional camera with you.
I am a professional photographer, so that helps.
So I'm pretty confident that's going to be good. But you have been just Jill on the spot every time somebody's needed something.
Yes.
So thank you so
You're
much.
Welcome. You're
and
welcome.
I just
My
want
pleasure.
you to know that you have a pass for TBEX anytime you want to go in the future.
Woohoo!
Anytime. Wow.
Anywhere? More importantly,
anywhere. Anytime, anywhere.
Amazing. Well, I want to say...
You're going to get so many emails
I know.
tomorrow,
No.
Rick.
We don't want any more volunteers.
So that's it. I'm the only one, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
So it is my first TBEX, and I was very impressed with the organization. Even the signage being here like a few days earlier, I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like they're, you know, very organized, and just the opportunities for networking, and I'm very impressed, and I hope to attend many more.
So let's back up.
Yeah.
Do you have a blog, Fuse?
Yes.
What's your blog?
It's FuseTravels.
Okay.
And a TikTok. So
I saw some of your TikToks.
Yes. So my travel blogging story has been, I've always traveled because I emigrated to the United States, and I would always go back to Brazil. I visit Europe, you know, in college. I went back to Brazil to live, and I taught English as a foreign language. I've always been traveling, and I teach SEO for photographers. So I've been doing that for 9 years online before online teaching was a thing. My first class was in Google Plus, RIP, Google Plus communities. So, I'm like, oh, I know SEO. I should start a travel blog. It always had been in my mind. And I'm like, it's too competitive. It's just, I don't know. I just didn't want it to be another thing that didn't, pan out. So I didn't even try. So I say I was making excuses. And then with this past trip, and when we would go on trips, even my husband, we would do all these little videos but never post it as if we were travel bloggers, And so in this trip, 2 weeks before the trip, I started a new TikTok just for travel. And my video, before I even left for the trip, went viral on TikTok. And it was just the kind of mask they made us wear on the plane. So it's like a silly thing if you think about it. But, it also raises this, like, traveling during the pandemic. And some people don't approve of that. But that gets comments. And then they start arguing with each other. But so I have a travel. So I was like, you know what? This is it. So I was blogging about some local stuff. So I was blogging about South Florida and business and marketing, like my topics. And then so I switched it to FuseTravels and then pretty much started just writing my blog posts about my trips to Southwest Europe.
Cool.
So I take it, even though that you're here to run around after this and that and
I'm networking.
Yeah, and I guess you also went to see some sessions.
Yeah, so, I was helping in the room upstairs, so I was able to attend some sessions, which was really good because yesterday was about branding, which I love, and today was about writing, which is something I need to get better at. So it was just really, and even the opening keynote, I love what they said about you being a bridge for your audience. And as I'm sharing my travel experiences, of course I don't get everything right. You're human, you'll misunderstand some information, especially in a different language. So I loved what Max said about, like, it's okay, right? Like, you can make a mistake. You're just being honest. Hey, I'm not the expert, or I'm learning as I go. Or, it was something with a vaccine thing about the booster. I said something wrong. And that caused a lot of, like, oh, my God, you're giving out misinformation. But the cool thing about TikTok is that you can just continue a series and say, hey, guys, this is the latest update. This is what I've learned. So then what happened was, as I'm sharing, people start asking a bunch of questions. And then on TikTok, you could do video replies.
Yeah.
So I think there's this misconception that, TikTok is just for young people and you have to dance and be silly. All my videos are pretty much talking head. I'm going to do a dance video today because I just hit 3,000 followers.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I'm going to do a little Brazilian dance video. I am Brazilian. But you don't. Like, mine are, like, legit, like, this woman just asked me, should I, do you think it's okay to rent a car in Portugal or should I get a driver? So I'm just going to reply and tell her my opinion.
Yeah.
In my experience, and I'm getting, so I have a newsletter, people are signing up I have a little free travel guide, people are signing up, and I'm excited. So I'm here to learn more because I want to be able to learn more about the press trips and about, how to also about travel writing too. So I'm very excited.
What about the networking? Did you get a chance to talk to some of the attendees? And
Oh yeah, best networking happens at happy hour, but no, yeah. So I've been able to speak, talk to speakers, tourism board, different brands, like the Stay 22 gals. I'm going to sign up for affiliate links. So that was really cool to learn that they could simplify that process because it can be confusing, when you're first starting to try to sign up for all the affiliate links. But yeah, and then the travel writing, Max's session was awesome.
Max Harshthorn, who was another guest of ours. Yeah.
He was great.
Yeah, and Mark's too. Mark was
Baker.
So he's so experienced. So he gave really good resources and, talked about how press releases should really still be sent out, which was interesting because some people are like, oh, that's dated. And he's like, no, send the press release. But yeah, it's been, it's great, and it's great meeting the TBEX family staff, right? Like, I feel like it's a family, and
everybody here is like family for sure.
So I'm like, oh my God, whole new world's opening up. So
yeah, and this is your first TBEX.
I know, yes.
Yeah. So where can we follow you so you can get that up to more than 3,000 followers?
On TikTok, babe. So it's FuseTravels, FUSE Travels, on TikTok, Instagram, and the blog. And Pinterest. I love Pinterest, too. As a travel blogger, Pinterest is your friend.
Pinterest is great, and it's one of the most underused from creators, social platforms. But, yes, it's great.
I agree 1,000%, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it's not a social media platform. It's a discovery platform. No one's social. That means that I actually don't have to be social. One more social media. Secondly, your pins and your boards show up in Google results. A lot of people don't realize that. So they think it's about going viral inside of Pinterest. No, I'm trying to get my content found in Google instead. So it's a very powerful tool.
Look at Fuse. The volunteer dropping the knowledge on the podcast.
I'm going to apply to speak, too. I'm going to apply to speak on SEO.
I think you're going to be on stage at some point.
I am soon. I think Lafayette.
Well, we will definitely talk about that as well.
See, guys, you got to put yourself out there. You never know what doors will unlock.
That, by the way, Fuse, that's great advice. It's absolutely true. Any conference you go to, especially here at TBEX, you can really go up and talk to anybody. Don't be rude.
No.
Which you have never been.
No.
But it's okay to go up and say, hey, my name is so-and-so. What's your name? Or, hey, I follow you. I read your blog or I watch your videos. That's totally okay.
Yeah.
Everybody here will embrace you and answer any question you have.
And it's those in-between moments. You're waiting in the lunch line. You sit down to somebody and you just start a conversation. I mean, you don't even know. They're like, this awarded writer for Lonely Planet, or been in the industry so long. But if you just, in Brazil, there's a saying that's I'm going to say in Portuguese, o não você já tem, which means the no you already have. So why not pitch? Why not send that email? Why not slide into the DM of Jan?
Say that one more time.
So the no you already have.
But how in Portuguese?
So o não você já tem.
That's a great saying.
Right? Like, I already have the no, so why not try for the yes? Maybe I'll get a yes. And I did. And here we are.
Yeah. Well, Fuse, thank you again
for
sending us that timely email.
Obrigado.
Obrigado.
Yes.
And thank you for doing such a great job here.
We
really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys, and I'm so excited for the next one.
We will see you at the next one.
And the next one. And the next one. And the next one.
This gets addicting, I see.
See all the links mentioned in this episode in the show notes and on tbexcon.com/podcast.
Rick, one of the first things we spoke to Fuse about was her name and my name and how Starbucks gets it wrong. When I got here to Porto in Portugal, before I could get into my Airbnb, I sat down at a Starbucks right around the corner from where I'm living. And I want to show you here on the screen what my Starbucks wrote on my cup.
Palle Boom.
Palle Boom. P-E-L-E-B-O-O-M.
That's a great name. Palle Boom. I think you should change your name.
It was exactly my point. It's a great name. Palle Boom. Palle Boom. Yeah, so I want to get a T-shirt with that.
It's a lot closer than Philip.
Yeah, so much closer. Actually, that thing in Budapest that we were talking about with Philip and then Pio, I went back a third time and said Bo again and then spelled it to him B-O and then he wrote B-O-O. So the third time it was Boo. So
Boo is, people can understand Boo. There's a guy, it's a really old act now, like 20 years or more, stand-up comedian. He's an Asian guy living in the South in Alabama. So he had this Southern accent, really strong accent. He grew up there.
Alabama?
Yes, like that. And his name is J.B. His parents just named him J.B., right? And he goes to get his driver's license, and he tells a story about how he gets his license, and he tells the lady at the DMV, my name's just J.B. J only, B only. And he gets his driver's license back, and it's Jonely Bonely.
My God. Oh.
Yeah, you'd appreciate that, I think.
Yeah. Our next guest has been a travel journalist and editor since 1989, originally on local, then national radio in the UK, before moving online just before the millennium. So he's an old-timer. He's been doing radio almost as long as I have. He gets embarrassed when he has to say 87 is when he started. I actually did my first radio show in 85, just saying how it's not embarrassing.
You guys are old.
We are so old, me and Alastair McKenzie. And here's the conversation we had with Alastair McKenzie at TBEX Marbella. Our next guest is also another quote-unquote old-timer and a familiar face.
Alumni, TBEX alumni.
Alumni. But you come from a journalistic, old traditional market background. Mm-hmm. You have a background in radio as well, mm-hmm. which is something that I adore. So we get somebody who has good microphone skills. But we'd like to talk to you about the changes, what's happening from where you come from mm-hmm. to what's happening now and what's happening in the future.
Mm-hmm. So when did you start as a journalist, Alastair?
Oh, God, this is going to be so embarrassing. I started in 1988 as basically an online journalist in the local radio station. I used to make all of the weekly speech programs for a station called Devon Air down in Exeter, and we broadcast to most of Devon and Torbay and Honiton and that kind of area. And I did a business program, a personal finance program, an award-winning, as it turned out, personal finance program, and 2 travel programs and an arts program. So it was quite a range, and I loved the travel. The rest of it I could have happily. In fact, I was almost. My arm was twisted to do the personal finance program.
We've heard that theme, Palle, haven't we, from a lot of people who did something else, and travel was another thing they did, but they found a way to get rid of the other thing and just focus on the travel part.
Yeah, it applied to Mark Baker, who was one of my guests on the stage today. It did exactly the same thing. He was very much into financial journalism, and I think we both agreed that it's interesting. It is something that's important, but the truth is, as soon as you open the mic to somebody with a foreign accent or with an exotic tale to tell, the audience is just drawn in a way that they're possibly not with personal finance.
Like Americans with a British accent.
Like Americans with a British accent, yes, or vice versa.
Sounds smarter than us for some reason.
I couldn't put my finger on what that might be. But I started in local radio, and then we had our first national radio license awarded to a station called Classic FM, which actually became international quite quickly. So we had a Dutch service, and we had a Classic FM South Africa and Classic FM Japan and so on. And I got in touch with the about-to-be program controller and said, with your audience, you should be doing a travel program. And he said to me, you're absolutely right, come up and talk to me about it. And I went up, and I remember they were building the studios around us. And I was with him for about 15 minutes, and he said, you've got the gig. And that was it. And then next thing I know, I'm week 1, Thursday evening, I'm doing an hour-long live program. And as we built that audience up, it was to just under 1 million listeners in the first half hour of the program, and just over 1 million listeners in the second half.
How long did you do that?
For about 7 years, 7 or 8 years. There came a point, this was one of those transitions in the radio industry, and Palle will know this well. There came a point where radio became very segmented, so that we got to the point where if you were, for example, pre-1940s Jazz FM, then when people listened to the station, they expected to hear pre-1940s jazz. And this applied to not just to traditional stations, but also to .coms and so on and so forth. That's where all this plurality of stations emerged from. So with Classic FM, people tuning to that expected to hear classical music. They didn't expect to hear Valerie Singleton halfway up Mount Sinai. And that was that was the... Of all the specialist programs, mine was the last to go because it made the most money by far. And in the end,
because travel is the second biggest industry in the world, which a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, we famously snitched the BBC Radio 4's gardening program team from them and did its gardening program. It was very successful, but it was nothing like as successful as the travel program. And in the end, I wound up doing inserts into some of my colleagues' programs, and that was for a couple of years, and then I moved on.
So, Alastair, I first met you many, many years ago now at a travel-related conference. I think it was a blogger thing attached to the World Travel Market in London. I think that's the first time we met. So how early did you start at least being curious and hanging around with these bloggers? Because, you know, the relationship between journalists and bloggers, especially early, was pretty hostile.
It was, yes, it was. That's a good point. It was by accident, and the approach almost came the other way. In the interim, I dabbled with a couple of things. I set up a travel news distribution site. I set up a business. Palle will love this. That was creating audio for the internet, and it was
before podcasting.
And it was using an XML language that
synchronized. Did you invent podcasting after Al Gore invented the internet?
Yes, and I'd like to claim copyright on that, please.
Yeah, you remember? You know the guy. There's a guy who claims he invented podcasting who's like suing everybody. I don't know what the latest is.
Right.
It's a big scandal in the States.
Yeah. No, but anyway, the long and the short of it is, I was aware of some of the bloggers who were just starting out, and I remember it was at World Travel Market. It must have been 2009, probably. There were a bunch of us who used to gather together. Again, bloggers and journalists. We used to gather for a thing called Trav Blog Camp, which was...
Yes.
You remember Trav Blog Camp? It was set up by Daniel Cronian.
Yes.
Yes. And it was great fun, and some of the early pioneers like Gary Arndt were there, and we used to then retire to the pub. Actually, we used to hold it in a pub, but either way. And I remember that time there was a couple of Spanish people, one of them from Minug, which is a Spanish travel TV company, and they were sort of going around everybody and asking them questions about what they did and so on and so forth. And the next thing was that we got this invitation to Valencia, and I think that was the kind of the formation. Valencia for the Formula One. They spent huge money on this because, you know, tickets just to the qualifiers are like £600 each. So it was a big output, and they basically hothoused all of these influencers from around the world. So Jessica Berlin, who I think at that time was with Cirque du Soleil and is now with American Outfitters, and what's her name? Oh, and Stephanie Michaels, who was known as Adventure Girl. She had a huge following. It was 1.5 million followers. These are all kind of big players in the business. And they brought us down there to basically do this, to talk about travel and about ways it was developing, and to give the local tourist office the benefit of their wisdom.
Was it Juancho that would set that up in
Juancho
Valencia?
Lantada, well done. Yes,
one of the pioneers.
One of the pioneers.
On the DMO side of working with travel creators.
And what was astonishing about it was that I loved it, but I found it very strange, because here comes that transition from traditional journalism into blogging. The first thing that happened was I met all these other bloggers who I knew, but I hadn't actually seen in action, and I suddenly realised they were all talking about each other. I mean, their audiences were. Keith Jenkins's audience was saying, "Oh, you're going to meet up with Nellie Huang, you know, another well-known blogger." And I was going, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." And then they started pointing their cameras at each other. Well, as traditional journalists, we would never do that. We'd never even acknowledge that there was somebody else from a newspaper.
The things that you guys would do at the bar later, we never heard about.
You never heard about. So,
that is the story with travel bloggers and creators.
Well, it's even more than that, because we might use a quote. We'd say, Joshua, who's been here many times, says it's changed over the years, but the fact that Joshua was working for the Observer newspaper wouldn't get mentioned in there. But the other startling thing was also it became very quickly, because there's always that element of competition. In traditional journalism, you had to go there and get, if you're on a press trip with a bunch of people, you had to get something that was unique to you. Your editor didn't want to see exactly the same story in the competition newspaper. So there would always be that point, usually on the second day, on a press trip, where you look around and you go, oh, where's Rob gone? And it turns out that Rob's found a little story and has gone off to get it. With bloggers, it was the exact opposite.
Hey, let's everybody go over here.
I've just discovered there's an aging rock star in the next village, and he makes fireworks for the fiesta. I'm going down to interview him. Anybody want to come?
Yeah,
and that was a striking difference. So I kind of got into it early.
Because we didn't have a publisher or an editor telling us, I want your story to be different from everybody else's.
We were our own competition in a sense.
Yes.
And that's always been the way with blogging. It was always striking that if, for example, there was somebody asked you to go somewhere, let's say go to Funchal or wherever it might be, and you go, oh, I can't because next week I'm going to be somewhere else. But you might ask X or Y because this is exactly their kind of thing. So we would always pass jobs around us in a way, and
but it was behind the scenes.
That was this was this was bloggers, and it was up front. It was it was really good.
But I mean, with journalists, it would be behind the scenes versus
yes, absolutely. So it was very, very striking.
I once saw an executive, I think from NBC, in a room full of mommy bloggers, in a keynote say, because television stations. I don't know how it works with the BBC in Europe, but in America, you'd go on the Johnny Carson show, and if you were on CBS and he's on NBC, he wouldn't say the name CBS. He'd just say, you have a show on another network, right?
Yeah.
Name that can't be said. And the blogger asked her, why do you guys do that? And we all link to each other, and we're all friends. And the lady, she was like a senior VP at NBC, she goes, why would I do that? You're my competitor. I want to own you. I want to crush you. Yeah. Why would I link to you?
Yeah, I know.
Their heads just exploded.
It's very strange. I spent years as the on the board and also as chairman of the British Guild of Travel Writers. And in the early years, we used to produce a yearbook, and it had 2,000 contacts in there from the industry, travel PRs, tour operators, DMOs, all of that kind of thing. And every year it was updated, and every year I'd have a team of people who'd phone round and check the details. And every now and then you'd come across a PR company that had one or two travel clients, but actually was a fast-moving consumer goods specialist or something like that. And the striking difference was that if you ask them for who their client list is, they'd go, well, why would we tell you? We don't want anybody to know that. But if you ask a travel PR company, then they'll go, oh, sure, yes, absolutely. And you go, oh, you just won that, haven't you, from Better PR down the road? And they go, yes, we did. But they've got another one as well that's come in. So it was very much a community and a lot of churn in that industry. One of the things I noted from literally doing that exercise every year was there was an average 17% churn in staff. And you'd find PRs, junior PRs going from here to this PR company, and they were all kind of moving around. It's a fabulous community across the entire travel industry, but it's not just on the media side.
Coming as a content creator, that's one of the things I really enjoy about being in this industry, that we help each other. But do you think it's going to change? Do you think there's going to be more competition as the business matures?
No, I see no reason why it should. But you and I both know change happens.
It definitely already has. It's not as kumbaya as it was in those early days. There are rivalries in the blogosphere for sure. There are competitors in the blogosphere for sure. But the general spirit of cooperation is definitely still there. It's just kind of the nature of how this ecosystem works.
It was much easier earlier because as the thing evolved and as the early bloggers, they certainly they covered the ground. I always liken it to the to the Wild West. All these covered wagons would set off across the plains and stake their claim over parts of America. And it's a bit like that in the blogging field. The early adopters were the ones who really
the land barons.
Yeah, became the land barons. And
so, and as it gets more crowded, and then the sheep farmers move in and want to put up barbed wire, and the cattle farmers can't get through anymore.
Yeah, so the parcels of land get
Me
smaller
and my cowboy
smaller
stories.
Yeah. Cowboy stories and Johnny Carson references. That's Rick for you.
But another thing I'll say, a reason that I think it's still collaborative, Palle, is that we need each other in a way that you don't need each other in the traditional media ecosystem, where you have structure, you have a publisher, you have an editor, you have fact checkers, you have all of these other people within the organization that support you.
Yes, exactly.
Whereas a creator, we're on an island all by ourselves. Yep. There's nobody else around us. Sometimes we're the only ones who even understand what it is we do until we come to a place like this. And now we know what we're all in the same boat together here. So that's why people tend to help each other.
That's very important because yes, we're all flying solo or as couples, but it's only the top 10, 15 who really have the resources. I mean, Matt Kepnes, Nomadic Matt, I remember saying to Matt one day probably at a TBEX, I think, that I said, I read that tweet you wrote this morning. It was really, and he looked at me and he went, Alastair, you don't think that was me, do you? And of course, Matt's got a staff of people who are doing it. I'm going, maybe not, So it's really only the top guys who have any kind of sort of staff level, and it's only as you get up to the top that you can start to employ specialists for specialist jobs. So if you want some legal advice, or you need something designing, or you want to farm out your editing work, or whatever it might be, you can do it to virtual assistants, and that makes life easier. But yeah, that's it. That's essentially it. It is much more cooperative, simply because we need each other.
Just before Rick says, by the way, one more question, as he normally does, I'd like to just know a little bit about Mech Traveler with two L's, M-E-C-H,
very important.
Traveler.
Very British.
Yeah.
Mech Traveler, this is something...
Oh, did I say it wrong? I said Mech.
Yes, no, it's Mech Traveler. Yes, Mech Traveler.
Okay,
it's mechanical travel. But it's mechanically minded travel is the strapline. But it's in a way, I think I need to slightly adjust it because it covers more than that. It is... I spent a long time talking about exactly this, about how all the big land spaces have been gobbled up, and if you're going to make an impact now, you have to do something very different or go niche. And so this was niche for me. I wanted to do something that I could really concentrate on and enjoy. I've spent a lifetime being shown cathedrals and markets and all the standard stuff you see as a travel journalist. It's interesting stuff, and I can write about it or talk about it. But I thought I'd write about stuff I was interested in. So it's about particularly things like military history, battlefield sites, museums. It's about transport systems, people installing new tram systems in Lyon, the magnificent new sea lock that's allowing the big ships now to get all the way up to Amsterdam. It'll be about the next generation of tunnels linking up Denmark and Germany. It's about technology and history and where you can see it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alastair.
Yeah, thank you, Alastair. It's always great to see you. You did a great job today in the keynote, by the way. I always tell people, and I know I've told you many times, I thought your interview several years ago with John Minahan at TBEX was one of the best keynote talks I've ever seen. You're a true professional, and there are a lot of things that creators can learn from journalists in general, but from you in particular. And thank you for being one of those allies on the journalist side to the travel creator community. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're listening to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX.
I love talking to Alastair, as we said in that interview, Palle, because he, again, is one of those journalists who was not hostile to creators in those early days. And there is a lot that traditional media and creators can learn from each other. It's not one side's not right about everything and the other side's not wrong about everything. It's just understanding that we're using the new platforms to convey information to people, and understanding, while there may be differences between what's a quote unquote traditional journalist versus a current creator who sometimes is a journalist and sometimes is not. That doesn't mean one's good and one's bad. There's value in both of those things. And he understands that. And he's always trying to help our community understand journalistic tools and principles and ethics that they can use in creating better content. So
yeah.
We love having Alastair.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that last week when we spoke about Alastair and the panel that he moderated. Whenever I'm in the Great Hall and he goes on stage, I sit back and relax because I know that I'm in good hands. That he will. This is going to be good. This is going to be entertaining, and he always guides us through the whole thing in safe hands.
Put everything else aside, and if you missed it while you were there, definitely go see the keynote session. And if you weren't there, you can go see that on YouTube and all the sessions on the virtual ticket. But Alastair is a great example of what a professional interviewer does, right? He's so calm. He listens to what people say. He asks probing questions. He has an idea in mind. He has an agenda of where he wants to go, but he's not stuck to that. And if somebody says something interesting that kind of takes a little diversion, a little detour, he'll follow that road. Mm-hmm. And again, you would not be doing a bad thing by listening to the way he conducts an interview and kind of mirroring his techniques.
Yeah, he makes you and me look like amateurs.
Me for sure. Yeah, I want to be Alastair when I grow up.
Exactly. Yeah. That was this week's episode of Travel Matters. Next week we have a conversation that turned out to be really, really interesting and thought-provoking. I thought a lot about it after we did the interview with Rachel Heller and Shobat George about how to go about being a responsible traveler.
I think you were definitely the bad guy in this conversation. No, I'm kidding.
No, a little bit, but it was really, really interesting.
No, I thought you did a great job. First of all, this is the session that's based on the session that they gave in Marbella, and they raised some really, really interesting and I think important questions about ethics and about being a responsible traveler and a responsible model for other people. Because, that's the whole point of the creators who come to TBEX is their job is to help other travelers who aren't creators make decisions about where they go and what they do when they go there. Mm-hmm. And, their point was we should be mindful about the content we create and the example that we're setting for other travelers to be responsible. So, we asked them what is responsible travel versus sustainable travel. And it's definitely a difference. While being responsible might include sustainable, it's a much bigger topic than that. But I love how you challenged them, and I agree. I know I challenged them a bit as well.
Yeah, and I actually think, Rick, that we were 4 people in that conversation, and we weren't really. We were on kind of different levels on how responsible and what can you do and what can't you do from one end of the spectrum to another. And also for me being from Scandinavia, maybe we have sort of a more relaxed feel of how you can do like somebody from the US.
It's not all Americans, but I think it is a thing, and it is important. Again, I think the issues they brought up were really important and really complicated. It's so easy to say, this is wrong, don't do it, mm-hmm. versus, okay, you say that's wrong, why is that wrong? Yeah. And dive into what are all the implications of that action and that result. I don't want to give away the interview before we get there, but these are important topics, and the line for each of us could be different. And I'm sure that it is. My line will be different than your line and different than Rachel's and Shoba's. And it was apparent in talking to them that their lines were different.
Yeah.
Shoba and Rachel didn't agree on everything. And so, just for us to think about, and we only, again, talked about a couple of the things that they gave in their talk, examples that they gave in their talk. I think it's important for us to think about it.
Yeah, but it's really, really important, and that's why we're having that conversation, because it's also about. It might be different in a year than it is now. It might be different tomorrow, what you can and cannot do, and I'm definitely trying to do the right thing, both for me and for my audience.
Yes. And for people that you encounter while you're traveling.
Exactly.
I know I said this on the stage. There's this word privilege now, which, again, not to get into all of that. We are, as travelers, very privileged, no matter where we're from and no matter what we do, to be able to live this life we live and to travel as frequently as we do and see as many places as we can and meet as many people as we can. We're all very privileged to do that. Mm-hmm. And I do think we have a responsibility to provide a good example of what other people should do on their very first trip. Like Rex, our videographer, it was his very first trip to Europe, filming for TBEX. So, people forget in our community that a lot of our audience are people who've never been anywhere before or only been one or two places before. Mm-hmm. And, one of the reasons we travel is to learn about places and to meet people and learn the difference between cultures and the similarities between cultures. So anyway, I really love the conversation. I didn't see their session, but I will definitely be watching it on the virtual ticket as soon as those go up. So, yeah, please definitely tune in for that one.
Absolutely. And that's coming up in next week's episode of Travel Matters. And that is it for this episode. It became a little bit longer because we had to have a big story about Utah and how Rick is about to end up in Utah. But I really enjoyed it. I hope that you as a listener also enjoyed both the interviews and Rick's amazing story of how he ended up in Utah. So bye for now, Rick.
Thank you, Palle.
Thank you.
See more about upcoming TBEX events on tbexcon.com. You can follow Palle on theradiovagabond.com. This episode of Travel Matters was hosted by TBEX CEO Rick Calvert and Radio Vagabond Palle and produced by radioguru.co.uk.
No more one more thing?
No, we covered it. I could have done 10 more things. But we got other things.